And for those of you who've just joined us, we now have 35 people in the learning community. If you haven't had a chance to do so yet, please do follow Mason's excellent example and type your full first and last name in the chat and where you're from. That way we'll have that official timestamp that you're here and that you will if you participate in the other two parts of the conversation, you will be eligible for the full 6 hours of credit for your participation. Give it one more moment. There are 39 of us. All right, so folks, we're going to officially go ahead and get started. There are 39 of us in the learning community for part 1 of a 3-part conversation. I will do a very brief introduction of myself. We'll take care of a couple of logistics, and then we will dive into the content for part 1 of our conversation. We're fortunate we have 2 other parts to continue our conversation on from today. So I now see that there are 42 of us in the learning community, which is fantastic. So by way of very brief introduction, my name is Paul, and I'm very fortunate to have the opportunity to guide this learning community conversation about the evidence-based practice of motivational interviewing. And I'm very curious, and you can use the chat to answer this question. How many folks in this learning community have ever attended a prior MI training? And if you've attended a prior one, type, okay, Courtney's waving, I have, excellent. So if you have, you can just put P in the chat for prior. And if this is your first MI conversation, type F in the chat. And whether you've had prior conversations or not had prior conversations, it's amazing. I'm excited to actually see some Fs. I'm really excited about that because it's rare for people to not actually have had exposure to this evidence-based practice already. And that's fantastic. I'm so glad you're here. And I'm so glad you're here with this learning community for a couple of reasons. And one of them in particular, and then I'm going to continue with my brief introduction, but one of them in particular is that some of the folks that are in this learning community are folks that I've had the great honor and pleasure to be in learning communities with prior. So I can say welcome back to those folks. And I can say you're fortunate, we're all fortunate to be in each other's company, because ultimately we're all probably going to learn something new about this evidence-based practice. Because I have found in my 22 plus year relationship with motivational interviewing that I continue to find out new things about motivational interviewing. Very simple to grasp and to understand. A bit more complex, takes much more practice to really become proficient at it. And by the end of our 6 hours together, you will know exactly what that means. All right. So again, thank you for your responses in the chat. I am currently a research project director at the New York State Psychiatric Institute. I'm also very fortunate to be a senior staff trainer and curriculum writer at the Northeast and Caribbean Addiction Technology Transfer Center. And very relevant to this topic, I'm fortunate to be a member of the international organization MINT, which is the Motivational Interviewing Network of Trainers. Heather, that's something you've heard of before, I'm going to guess. You were nodding your head? Yeah? Are you a member of MINT too? No. Okay. We can't hear you, Heather. We can't hear you. Go ahead. Heather's about to say something, I think. Go ahead.
I'm just a student currently in a master's program, but I'm just learning about motivational interviewing because I believe it's kind of the foundation as far as building, behavioral changes and connecting rapport and figuring out what the client is really looking to achieve.
Yeah, it really can be. And that's a great way of thinking about it, Heather. And I appreciate that you're acknowledging the person's autonomy, what they want to achieve. And MI is very, you're absolutely right, Heather. MI is very committed to that. So, folks, we are going to take care of just a couple of brief logistics, and then we will go ahead and go forward with the content. And Heather has already started us off in a great place with the idea of acknowledging right off the bat that this evidence-based practice is based on honoring the person's autonomy, that they get to decide about the change, if there's a change that they want to make or not make. So just keeping that in mind. And thank you, Heather, for putting that on the table right at the very beginning of our conversation. All right, I'm going to share my screen. So we are going to be in this conversation for a little less than 2 hours today. I believe we are also meeting tomorrow at the same time. I'm pretty sure that's the case. And then I believe we are meeting on Friday, but at a different time. We're meeting in the morning, Eastern time on Friday. So just be very clear about that, folks, so you know that today, and I believe it's tomorrow, we start at 1 p.m. Eastern time and go to 3 p.m. Eastern time. And I believe on Friday, we are starting in the morning, I believe at 10, and we will go to 12 noon Eastern time. And Sonia, thank you for letting me know that. Okay, good. All right, so folks, we're going to cover a couple of logistical items, and one I need to stress in particular to all 47 of us who are here, because I just want to make sure that you make the decision that's right for you in regard to your participation, your being in the learning community today. Now, my hope is that we will be a learning community engaging in a conversation. And to that end, I'm going to invite everybody to consider that we be intentional about how we speak with each other. We want to use language that is welcoming, that's respectful, that's inclusive of all 48 people who have made the time to join this particular conversation. It's important to our funder that this conversation actually is supportive and adds something to what you're already doing or strengthens what you're already doing. So what we talk about, how we explore this evidence-based practice, what you bring to the table, what I bring to the table, it may not necessarily reflect the official views of our funder, and that's okay, because our funder is committed to you being supported and to you actually getting something that's useful. Welcome, welcome back. If you have not yet done so, and I believe just about everybody has, but if you have not yet done so, please take a moment and type your full first and last name in the chat and where you're from. And if you are sharing your computer, and I know that one of our colleagues I could see was in a room with 2 other people, please just make sure that their full name and where they're from is also in the chat, because we want to make sure that everybody who's here for all 3 parts gets a certificate for 6 hours of credit for their presence and their participation. On Friday, which Joanna has confirmed in the chat about the date and time, on Friday there will be a brief evaluation. There will not be one today, and there will not be one tomorrow, but there will be one on Friday that will be for all 3 parts. couple of additional things I'm going to ask you to consider. If you're able to, and let me emphasize, if you're able to, if it works with your particular learning style, if it works for your particular context, please turn on your camera and be on camera for the full conversation. If for whatever reason that's not possible, just send me a direct message. You don't need to send it to everybody else. Just send me a direct message and let me know that you're not going to be on camera. I just want to be clear as to perhaps why I'm just seeing your name and not seeing you. So again, if I leave it to your discretion about that, but if you are able to turn on your camera, please turn on your camera and be on camera. And if you're not going to be on camera for whatever reason, and you've sent me that direct message, do not let not being on camera in any way stop you from participating. You're more than welcome to unmute. You're more than welcome to respond in the chat. I would ask, until you have something that you want to say, that you remain muted. Whenever you have something that you want to say, even if I'm in mid-sentence, don't hesitate to interrupt me and say, hey, I'd like to add something here, information, a question, a reaction, a comment. You're more than welcome to do that. What I would ask, though, is if Jamie has the floor and is making a point, I'm going to ask you not to interrupt Jamie or anybody else of the 48 people who are here in the learning community. So you can interrupt me, but please don't interrupt each other. Let's give each other the respect of letting somebody make their statement, make their point uninterrupted. And again, if there's something you want to add or comment on, not to worry. I will do my best to give you the floor to share the time to let you say what you'd like to say. The final thing that I'm going to ask before I just review something that I want us to all be on the same page about is I'm going to invite people to speak from the I. I had this experience. I've done this. I practice motivational interviewing in this particular setting. So we're making I statements as opposed to generalizations. Now, if I'm going to make a generalization for educational purposes, whatever that may mean, I will preface it with saying I'm about to make a generalization. I'll try and be very intentional and very clear about that. So one final detail before I invite you to commit to these guidelines. One final detail that I'll ask you to consider so that you can make the choice that's right for you is that in order to receive credit, this course, there's an opportunity to receive 6 hours of credit. You're making a 3-part commitment. In order to receive credit, you have to be present and participating in all 3 parts from beginning to end. I am sorry. Well, in some ways, I'm not sorry. And I'm not sorry because that way we're assuring when we issue a certificate, we've issued a certificate in good conscience, that the person we're giving that 6-hour certificate to has been here and participated for 6 hours. So the thing I am sorry about is that we're not able to provide makeups if you're not able to come to all 3 parts. We're also not able to give partial credit. So, you know, you could come to parts 1 and 2 fully, but if you can't come to part 3 for the full conversation, unfortunately, we can't issue you any credit. And I just want us to be clear about that, because if for whatever reason you can't participate in all 3 parts, if you can't, you know, be here the whole time, you are more than welcome to stay. You're more than welcome to be here. And I need you to understand, you could also choose to not be in the learning community today and come back when you can participate for the whole thing, especially if you need the credit. If you don't need the credit and you can only be here for part of it, you are welcome. So I just want to be clear about that with folks. I'm going to quickly check the chat. And Understood. Thank you so much for these direct messages about not being able to be on camera. Okay. And I think, Amanda, if you want to send something directly to me, you just have to click, I think you just have to click you'll see, I think, my name there, and you can send it directly to me. Fantastic. Okay, Julie, that's good to know. All right. And again, you can communicate, directly with me and not have to share that with the entire group if that's what you prefer. So I'm just going to ask seeing folks, and those I can't see, I'm going to ask you to type the letter A in the chat for agree. So can everybody agree to those guidelines as stated? You can wave, nod, give it, thanks, Amanda, give a thumbs up, directly deposit to my checking account, whatever works for you. Excellent. Heather's like, no way am I depositing to your checking account. Good boundaries, Heather, good boundaries. Excellent. All right. So folks, we are ready to begin and I see lots of agreed in the chats. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciate it. So we are about to begin our conversation about motivational interviewing. Now, I'm going to start this conversation off perhaps in a way that I haven't started this conversation off in the past. And I'm going to start it off by asking for 3 volunteers who would be willing to unmute and answer a question. I'm asking for 3 volunteers, 1, 2, 3, who would be, okay, so Rebecca has volunteered, Charmaine has volunteered, and let's see, Marisol has volunteered. Fantastic. We have our 3 volunteers. And Marisol, since you unmuted first, you can answer this question first. And again, I'll pose the question and I will defer to your autonomy about whether you'd like to answer it or not. And Marisol, you can say pass if you don't want to answer the question, okay?
Okay.
All right. So here's the question. And I'm going to ask you, Charmaine and Rebecca, the same question. Marisol, when you think of the evidence-based practice of motivational interviewing, what do you think is the most important aspect of this evidence-based practice that people in the learning community might want to consider?
I say it's the ability to have the patient engage, have the autonomy. They have you're not coercing them. They are volunteering to be involved in this process. That's the biggest piece about it. Client self-determination.
Beautiful. So client self-determination, no coercion. And Marisol, are you okay if I add the word no manipulation?
Correct, yes.
Okay. So no manipulation and participant self-determination.
Correct, yes.
Thank you. Thank you. And building on what Heather said too. So Marisol, thanks for starting us off.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you. Rebecca, if you, in your own words, were going to underline what you think is the most important aspect about this evidence-based practice for the learning community to understand, what would you underline?
So it's been a long time since I've really dissected motivational interviewing,
Sure.
but I use it in my practice. So my first idea was it helps the service provider understand where the client is at so that you can both kind of be working towards the same thing instead of you coming in with your agenda and saying, this is what we need to do, or this is what the courts say we need to do, or whatever. So you know where you are in that progression of things.
Fantastic. Again, an essential piece of it. The person and you need to be on the same page. And Rebecca, I really appreciate, and you did use this word, so I really want to underline it, so we can better understand where this person is. And if I understood you correctly, Rebecca, the other piece you were really identifying is we want to be very aware of the fact that we may have an agenda and we need to maybe set that agenda aside. Yeah, okay, I got an electronic thumbs up on that. Thank you so much, Rebecca. Thank you. And Angel also wants to respond to this, so we'll go to Charmaine and then we'll go to Angel. Charmaine, what would you underline as the most important aspect for this learning community? And there are 51 of us here. For this learning community to think about, focus on, I'm going to use Rebecca's word, dissect. What would you say, Charmaine, is the most important thing?
I would say listening to understand and not listening to respond. Listening to understand, and also to learning to listen from a perspective where you're also listening for the onset, because what the person is not saying is exactly what they are saying.
Yeah.
And seeing the possibilities of transformation for this patient, help them to see the possibilities where when they finish a session with you, they have left your environment or your presence with a sense of, well, hope is the word I want to use, but not really, but inspiration and motivation to see that they're not alone. I'm not alone in this jungle. I'm not alone struggling. Yeah. Everybody has addictions of all different kinds, and you're not broken. There's nothing wrong with you. I like to use the phrase, we are perfect in our imperfected states. Okay, so everybody lives in a glass house.
Yes. Yeah. Yes. We're all human beings, right? Yes. Yeah. So, Charmaine, you said so much, and you'll notice that of everybody who's commented, and we're going to get to Angel in just a minute, of everybody who's commented, nobody said exactly the same thing.
Right.
And everything that everybody has said is part of the mix of evidence-based practice. And Charmaine, I want to underline that I really, really appreciate that you started with listening to understand, because sometimes when we're listening, well, I'm going to make an I statement here. I'm not going to make a generalization. Sometimes when I'm listening, I'm waiting to actually talk. I'm not really listening to what the person is saying.
Mm-hmm.
And you're drawing a very important distinction. And if you're really listening to understand somebody, they're going to be able to feel that you're present for them. Would you accept that, Charmaine?
I agree. One patient made a comment to me sometime last year. She had severe mental illness. I work in detox.
Okay.
And people were labeling her this and whatever. And so when she spoke, I really focused on her, icon, listen to her. She says, what I like, she said, what I appreciate is that you see me. Mm. I said, wow. She said, you see me. I'm not just like a number, you see me. And people want to be seen, and not only heard, but be seen, that I feel you, because how I deal with my work is that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So what you're going through, I could also have that experience as well. I like, if I walk through the shoes that you were in, that could have been me too.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
We are all connected.
We're all back to the glass house, right?
That's right.
Yeah. And I don't know if you saw this in the chat, but I couldn't agree more with what Courtney wrote in the chat, because that is a huge compliment, Courtney. I couldn't agree with you more. For a participant to say, you see me. So think about it, folks. Oftentimes people think that motivational interviewing is, it's active listening. Well, you just heard it from Charmaine and Courtney. It's actually more than that. It is that, but it's also more than that. And I'll go so far, and Angel is so patient. Angel, I hope you haven't lost your thought. I'll go so far as to say, folks, that everything that's been discussed so far, even starting with what Heather told us, can be learned through practice. One can become more skilled at listening to understand. One can become more skilled at being present. And it simply requires practice. Sometimes, because we care, we may be very concerned or uncomfortable with the decision that a participant or a client makes. And there is a strength and there's empowerment in being able to say what you want. Lori wrote in the chat, listen and silent have the same letters. Yeah, absolutely. And sometimes silence, present silence, is maybe what that person needs. They just need to be heard. And to Charmaine's point, also needing to be seen at the same time. And you know, Charmaine, there was one other thing that you said that I found very intriguing, and I think there's great insight into what you said. And I'm hopefully going to repeat it the way you said it. And if I don't, help me out. I believe I heard Charmaine say, listening for the unspoken. Did I get that right? Okay. Charmaine's giving me the thumbs up. That is also part of the practice of motivational interviewing. We are listening on a particular level or for particular levels. So we're getting communication that may not necessarily be communication through words. It might be a deeper communication. It might be a nonverbal communication. It might be a communication through tone of voice. But to Charmaine's point, we're listening to try and understand what this person is communicating to us. So before I show my screen again, I'm just going to pause and ask if anybody else would like to unmute and make any additional comments or statements at this point. So the floor is open if anybody else would like to jump in and say anything at this point. Okay. Well, keep in mind, you can do that at any point. You can jump in and comment either in the chat or by unmuting at any point during this conversation. And I think we have a very solid beginning to move forward with this evidence-based practice. Let me just quickly check the chat. Yes. Yeah, Marisol added, agreed. That's what they basically want, to be seen as an individual, not as a diagnosis or not as a label. Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm going to show my screen again. So ultimately, folks, this 6-hour conversation really has two components, hopefully, that we're going to be able to touch on throughout the course of our 6 hours together. Component one is that my hope is that by the conclusion of the 6 hours, every one of you will walk away with a shared language and understanding about this evidence-based practice. And many of you who are quite familiar with it know that there's a lot of jargon that is associated with this evidence-based practice. And I'm actually going to type in the chat some jargon that you're probably all extremely familiar with. And it's just one of a number of things. And the challenge, if you accept it, if there's someone, I'm going to type this in the chat, and if there's someone who is familiar with what this jargon means, I'm going to invite you to unmute and share with the learning community what it means. So here it is, and this is probably the most famous jargon associated with this evidence-based practice. And I bet a number of you already know what I'm going to type in the chat. But this is the most famous jargon worldwide that is associated with this evidence-based practice. And there it is. So is someone willing to unmute and tell us what that means? I'll give you a hint. It doesn't mean these kind. So what does that mean? Is there any one of the 54 of us who knows what that means? Anyone willing to unmute and tell us what that means? Yep. And that's it, Jamie. Yep. You wrote the same thing that I wrote. But does anybody know what it means? Jamie, you know? Jamie L, you know? Okay. If you're willing to unmute, will you tell us?
It's open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries.
Round of applause for Jamie. Jamie, your mission, if you choose to accept it, you can pass. Jamie knows exactly what I mean, because I may be a little older than Jamie, but she, I think, understands what I mean, your mission, if you choose to accept it. Jamie, what are OARS? What is it? You absolutely, it's open-ended questions, affirmations, reflections, and summaries. What is it? We'll see if Jamie wants to unmute and tell us. Any way that you'd quantify what they are, Jamie? What?
I am not really sure.
Okay, fine. Angel, go ahead. Angel's going to help you out, Jamie. Angel is your lifeline. What an appropriate name. Go ahead, Angel. The floor is yours.
The way I put it in my head is a series of steps we need to do to accomplish a goal with a client.
Okay. So you're identifying OARS as steps, yes?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. Thanks for putting that on the table, Angel. Anybody else want to add to what OARS is? I'm checking the chat.
Is it to help move the counseling process forward? Those are like an actual or, but help pushing in a positive manner.
Okay, so Amanda, you're acknowledging something very related to it, which is that, and I'm going to add a word to what you said because you kind of opened the door to do it, which is they are intentional blank that can help move the conversation forward when used in a conversation. So Amanda, you are absolutely right. Go ahead. I see. Go ahead. Did somebody else want to add something?
I just want to be brief.
Yeah, go ahead, Abraham.
I guess I see as, the technique that you use, it's more like a dance that you use in order to do motivational interviewing.
Yeah.
Because I guess it's more of a dance than anything else. The back and forth where you're using open-ended questions, you're using the affirmations. So I guess the technique or style, maybe.
Yeah, a great point, Abraham. And we're going to go back to Angel in a minute, but you're making a great point because you're linking the use of these blank, and I'm going to invite you to fill in that blank, everybody, but you're intentionally using these blank in a way, just like Abraham said, that is in a particular style, which is sometimes referred to, and Abraham, you're 100% accurate, it's sometimes referred to as a dance between the participant and us. So it's not fixed. There's no pattern. It's not like you use O and then, oh, now I'm going to use A, and then I'm going to use R, and then I'm going to use yes. There's no pattern. We use, and here's the word, and somebody in the chat, I think, communicated this quite accurately. Jamie J, do you want to say anything about what you wrote in the chat? I'm pausing for effect to see if Jamie J will unmute and say anything about what they wrote in the chat, if they're able to. They may not be able to. Ah, understood. Well, that's okay. Thank you for letting me know. And thanks for using the chat. So I want to underline what Jamie J wrote in the chat. Jamie wrote in the chat, and Courtney says, she is stuck here with me. Well, maybe she's fortunate, Courtney. That's called a reframe. Jamie J wrote in the chat, their communication skills. They're simply, and Jamie says, I like being stuck here. Fantastic. They are communication skills. And P.S. folks, I'm going to tell you something very shocking. To some folks in our learning community, this may be shocking. But the seeds of it actually have kind of come through what Amanda and Abraham kind of shared with us. Is everybody ready to be shocked? You can nod, smile, wave. Belinda, are you ready to be shocked? Belinda's like, yeah, I'm ready. Okay, here it comes, Belinda. OARS, OARS, is not a part of motivational interviewing. They're look at Jamie's face. Jamie, you win the shock face of the day. They are not a part of motivational interviewing. They are simply communication skills. We use them. Belinda's not shocked at all. We use them all the time. They have been made famous by motivational interviewing. The acronym is famous because of motivational interviewing, but in and of themselves, let's say Mason and I are having a conversation, and Mason asks me an open-ended question. Unless certain other things are present and going on, simply because Mason is asking me an open-ended question does not mean that Mason is practicing motivational interviewing. It means that Mason is using an open-ended question. Good for Mason. Mason, that's a good thing. It doesn't mean that Mason's practicing motivational interviewing. OARS is internationally known. And everybody pretty much, this is a generalization, I could be wrong, but generally speaking, everybody associates OARS with MI. And again, the shocker here, which maybe doesn't shock so many people, is that the use of these core communication skills, thank you, Jamie J, they're simply core communication skills, does not mean you're practicing motivational interviewing. Now, I want to come back to Mason for a moment, because if that's okay, Mason, is that all right? Okay. So I'm coming back to Mason for a moment because let's say Mason and I are having a conversation. And let's say there's a behavioral change goal that I'm talking about with Mason. And part of me wants to make that change, and another part of me doesn't want to make that change. Okay? So those are the conditions. And then if Mason asks me an open-ended question that's related to that behavior change, that either gets me to talk about my desire to make the change, my ability to make the change, my reasons to make the change, or my need to make the change. If Mason's open-ended question brings any of that out from me, Mason is then practicing motivational interviewing. So, Angel writes in the chat, SOAP notes are a standardized, widely used framework for healthcare and clinical documentation. The acronym stands for Subjective Objective Assessment and Plan, the system. Okay, so thank you, Angel. Thank you for that information. The reason I'm not using that is because that is not associated with motivational interviewing. That's a documentation framework. And what we are talking about when we're talking about OARS, back to Jamie J again, is we are talking about a communication skill set. Now I'm going to state two questions. I'm going to speak two questions. Question 1 and question 2. I want you to write the number in the chat of which one of these questions, either 1 or 2, is the open-ended question. Question 1. Did you have a good day? Question 2. How was your day? Which one of those is the open question? Now, I'm going to ask 2 people who wrote the letter 2 in the chat to unmute and tell us why question number 2 is the open-ended question. 2 people who wrote number 2 in the chat. I'm going to invite you to unmute. Why is number 2 the open-ended question?
2 gives you the opportunity to expand more.
Belinda, 100 per Belinda P. We have 2 Belindas. We have Belinda J and Belinda P. Yeah, go ahead, Julie. And then I see somebody else wanted to say something too. Go ahead, Julie.
Number 1 was a yes or no answer, and that's why it's not an open-ended question.
Okay. So that's why it's not. Why is number 2 an open question?
Because it gives opportunity for explanation and more information to be heard.
Yep, just like Belinda P said. Yep. Heather, did you want to add something?
I was just going to say the open-ended question kind of guides the client towards self-reflection. So they have to really put thought and effort into their own thoughts.
Yeah, it creates the opportunity for self-reflection. Beautifully stated, Heather. Now, here's the really tricky question. And I'm not trying to trick you here. I'm asking a straightforward question. Okay, I'm not trying to be complicated. I'm not trying to be tricky. Oh, and Francine wrote, number 2 leaves room for a conversation between you and the client. Absolutely. So question number 1 is a closed question. Because it can be answered by yes or no. And P.S., in the practice of motivational interviewing, closed questions are not bad. They're just another tool. And we want to use the right tool for the right moment. Sometimes there is a moment to use a closed question. Sometimes we need a yes or no answer. Okay? Sometimes it can be instrumental to let us know what direction we're going to go in next or not. What direction we're not going to go in next. So here's my follow-up question to open or closed. We identified that question number 2 was the open-ended question. We have a lot of great answers as to why it's an open question. Here's the follow-up. Trust your gut. Don't overthink it. Here's the follow-up question. Belinda J is like, what's he gonna ask next? Here it comes, Belinda. When I asked the question, how was your day? Was I practicing motivational interviewing? Yes, no, unsure. Ah, there's not as much quick response. And somebody typed, maybe. I love that. I should add that to the list, maybe. Unsure, no, unsure. I will throw out for your and I appreciate everybody's answer. I'm going to ask everybody, all 52 of you. Melinda says, I would also say maybe. Okay. Okay. What I'll throw out for your consideration, a part of a larger conversation, Jamie J, absolutely. If it was part of a larger conversation, it may have been motivational interviewing. Does anybody recall when Mason graciously allowed me to use his name, and I'm using it again, I should probably pay rent or something, but when I used Mason's name, does anybody recall what I said were the conditions that would have made it the practice of motivational interviewing if Mason used an open-ended question? Did anybody catch what I said were the conditions? Now I'm not gonna hold Mason to answering that question because I was using his name. So, but if you want to, Mason, you can. Angel, what did I say the conditions were? What do you think?
You're giving the client autonomy
Okay.
and the ability to think and process things through,
Okay.
something they're possibly not used to.
Very true. Very true. And I will underline, Angel, just so we're clear, that doesn't necessarily mean we're practicing motivational interviewing. That means we're interacting with the person in
But
a.
you're
Go ahead.
you're giving back the power to the client.
Absolutely. That still doesn't mean we're practicing motivational interviewing. We're interacting with that person in a person-centered, respecting their autonomy way. It doesn't mean we're practicing motivational interviewing. Go ahead. Did you want to add something, Angel?
I would say it's guiding them along to make a decision.
Well, it is definitely guiding. That is part of the practice of motivational interviewing, but something else needs to be there in order for Mason to use his question intentionally. What was it that has to be there? It's actually 2 things. Go ahead, Heather.
If it's only 2 things, I was going to guess wrong, but I was going to kind of expand on what Angel just
Go ahead.
for guiding them to reflect on
Expand away.
the reasons, desires for some sort of change behavior.
Okay, so Heather has just got the first thing. There needs to be a target behavior, some behavior change that they're considering. So Heather, that's thing 1. And if Mason uses his open-ended question intentionally to draw out my desire to make that change, my ability to make that change, my reasons to make that change, or my need, Mason is then practicing motivational interviewing. But there needs to be one other thing associated with that behavioral change goal in order for Mason to be able to practice MI. What do you think, Angel?
Their desire to change?
Nope. Not entirely. Nope. It's directly associated with that behavior change. And Angel, I'll give you a 0.5. That's half of the answer.
Is it a I'm not saying it right, ambivalence?
You got it, Samantha. Samantha's got thing number 2.
Oh.
There has to, Abraham, did you want to add something?
No, I guess I was thinking about change talk, but
Okay, well, Abraham has just advanced us about 2 light years ahead of using open-ended questions, because what Abraham has just brought us to, and Samantha, it totally relates to what you just put out on the table, the ambivalence. What Abraham has just mentioned is the one part of the client's language. Okay? And Samantha, to your point, and I want to connect what Heather said and what you said, in order to practice motivational interviewing, in order for Mason to intentionally use his open-ended question, his question is going to invite me to talk about my desire to make the change that Heather has mentioned, my ability to make the change that Heather has mentioned, my reasons, or my need to make that change. And in order for it to be the practice of MI, Samantha, I need to feel ambivalent about that change. Part of me wants to make the change, and another part of me doesn't want to make the change. I'm on the fence. I haven't made the change, but I'm considering both sides. Antonio, the floor is yours.
But that tells me, from my perspective, that there is a sense of willingness for the change.
100%. So, and that's why I gave Angel a 0.5 in terms of his answer, because Angel was correct. There's some degree, it may be the tiniest little bit, but to Samantha's point, ambivalence, the presence of ambivalence means there's both sides. Both sides. The part that wants to, the part that doesn't. I want to link that to what Abraham said. So Abraham, you mentioned change talk, which is part of what the client says. So if that open-ended question gets me to talk about my desire, my ability, my reasons, or my need to make that change, what has just happened is I have offered change talk. Go ahead, Angel.
Are we talking about stages of change?
No, we are not. And I appreciate you saying that, because the stages of change, or the trans-theoretical model created by Prochaska and DiClemente about the same time that motivational interviewing was created by Doctors Bill Miller and Stephen Rolnick, is a way of looking at the overall arc of the process of change. Motivational interviewing is a method of talking about that change. It's a way of speaking with somebody that helps them identify their motivations to make the change. It helps strengthen their motivations, and we have to give credit where credit is due. Abraham hit the nail on the head. The more change talk that somebody offers, the more likely they are to then commit to making the change. Go ahead, Heather. You have a question, a comment? You sure? Oh, okay. Feel free to unmute at any time if you want. So keep that in mind, folks. We intentionally use the core communication skills when we are practicing motivational interviewing. We can only practice motivational interviewing if there's an identified behavioral change goal that the person feels ambivalent about. Now, let me add one other thing, and then I'm going to share some client language with you, okay? And then I'm going to ask for 2 volunteers who would be willing to unmute and read a scenario out loud. There are 2 characters. So I'm going to invite you to consider volunteering, and the only requirement is that you have to be able to unmute and speak loud enough so everybody can hear you read. Okay? Those are the only 2 requirements. So Jenny, are you volunteering, or are you want to comment, question, react? Are you volunteering?
I'm volunteering.
Fantastic. Great. We only need to get 1 more volunteer. So let me say this. Let's say I'm having a conversation with Taylor. And I say to Taylor, you know, Taylor, I want to lose 5 pounds. And I say to Taylor, you know, I just recently bought a bicycle, and I am going to get on that bicycle 3 times a day, and I'm going to ride for at least 20 minutes. And actually, I've done it once already, and I feel like I'm on my way to my goal. And, you know, there are a couple of things getting in the way, but for the most part, I feel like I'm going to do it. Is there an opportunity to practice motivational interviewing in that scenario with Taylor? And you can answer yes, no, unsure in the chat. Is there an opportunity to practice motivational interviewing there? Yes, no, unsure in the situation. Yep. So Francine is saying you can ask what's getting in the way. And Francine, P.S., that would be an open-ended question. The question I'm asking, though, is there an opportunity to practice motivational interviewing there? Jenny says yes. Johanna says yes. Belinda J is shaking her head yes. She may not have answered yes in the chat, but she's shaking her head yes. Belinda J, let's play poker together. Excellent, because I can read your face, which is wonderful. Now she's going to cover her face. She doesn't want me to read it. Excellent. So people are saying yes. Guess what? There's not. And the reason, exactly, and let me explain to you why there's not. And it's confusing a little bit, but there's not really an opportunity to practice motivational interviewing there because I'm not ambivalent. I'm not ambivalent. I already have a plan. I've already started to take actions. I'm not ambivalent about it. Now, it doesn't mean that ambivalence may not come in at some point, but at least at this moment, I'm not ambivalent about it. And if Taylor attempts to practice motivational interviewing, she might actually be interrupting my motivation, taking me backward. So if the person has an identified behavioral change goal that they are not ambivalent about, these are my ideas for how to do it. These are some of the actions that I can take to do it, i.e. their plan. These are some of the actions that I have done, taking steps. And C, the idea that they say, Taylor, I'm going to do this. That's called commitment language. You don't need to practice motivational interviewing there. So Maria, I'm not sure if you have a question or a comment, or if you, like Jenny, were volunteering to read the scenario.
I was volunteering.
Fantastic. We have our 2 volunteers. There's no need to practice motivational interviewing, though, because they already have the motivation. They've already taken steps. They've already developed a plan. So certainly from a conversational perspective, You would want to support them in their process. You would want to reaffirm their commitment. You're not practicing MI though, because the practice of MI has two primary goals. We know from what we had, the example I gave with Mason, we know that in order to practice motivational interviewing, and I can't remember who it was who said it, I don't see them at this particular moment, but one of our colleagues mentioned that, oh, I think it might have been Heather. Heather mentioned that there has to be a behavioral change goal. And there needs to be ambivalence about that behavioral change goal. Motivational interviewing was created to capitalize on the person who's on the fence. Like Antonio said, and said so clearly, when somebody's ambivalent, that gives me an indication that at least part of them is motivated or considering the change, which means that ambivalence about a behavioral change goal is an opportunity. One other thing I want to share with you before we go to the scenario, and that is I want to, and Abraham, you inspired this because of putting change talk on the table, okay? So let me lay out for you folks, in this particular scenario that I'm going to mention, we know that the person is considering a change. Okay? So we're just putting that on the table. We know that the person's considering a change. The other thing we know is that the person, the participant, the client is ambivalent about the change. Part of them is considering making it. Another part of them wants to keep doing what they're doing. Okay? So that's the framework. The person has come in to have a conversation with you about the change they're considering. This is what the person says. What I'm going to offer you now is client language. And Abraham is the person who brought our attention to the importance, thank you, Abraham, of the client's language. And Charmaine, I'm thinking of you as I say this because we are listening for what is being said, and we are also listening for the unsaid. We are listening to try and understand. So now I'm going to speak as the client, speaking to you. And then all I'm going to ask is if you have any thoughts or reactions to what the client said. And then we're going to go to Jenny and Maria reading a scenario to us. Okay? So this is what the client says. Well, you know, I've been thinking about cutting down the amount of weed that I smoke on a daily basis. But, you know, the only reason I smoke weed is because, you know, sometimes I get a little uncomfortable or a little anxious, and the weed actually helps me to feel more comfortable in my own skin. Also, you know, I have buddies that I hang out with, and we meet for lunch fairly regularly. We work near each other. And when I meet them for lunch, we usually smoke a little bit, and then I go back to work. And, you know, I like hanging out with those guys. My boss did tell me, though, that if I come back late one more time from lunch, he's going to write me up and move toward getting me fired. My girlfriend has also told me that when I'm under the influence of weed, she feels like I don't treat her with the same kind of care and respect that I do when I haven't smoked. So that's what the client tells you. That's the way the client told it to you. So anything stand out to you? Any thoughts or any reactions you have to what the client said? And P.S., thank you for creating a space or holding a space. I'm thinking of my colleague Antonio Ramirez as I say this. Thank you for holding a space to let the client say everything he wanted to say. So thanks for not interrupting me as the client. What do you think, Abraham? Any thoughts, reactions to what the client said?
So he's thinking about cutting. He said he's thinking about cutting back. Also, he listed reasons. He was listing reasons for. You see the ambivalence. Him listing reasons like his buddy was cool. His buddies were cool with it, but his jobs is causing him to have problems on his job and with his girlfriend. So um some things. So you see the ambivalence too. So,
Okay.
but you know, but you know, you could draw out that cutting back and kind of um and kind of use that to use motivational interview to draw that out and work with the patient, work with the client or patient that way.
Fantastic, fantastic. Your internet came back, so we could hear you much better that as you went on. That's great. So I want to underline that Abraham actually did a really nice summary of what the client said, and Abraham also noticed that the language that the client offered was the language of ambivalence. There were two sides to the conversation. And Abraham, I want to acknowledge that you suggested that this is an opportunity where you could actually practice motivational interviewing. And you do it by focusing on a particular area of the conversation. Did I get that right, Abraham?
Yeah, I would definitely pull out. You know, he said he wanted to cut back.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thanks for starting us off. And I think it was it Jenny who wanted to say something, or was it Julie? Am I remembering? Go ahead.
It's Jenny.
Go
Yes,
ahead,
I
Jenny.
just wanted to agree because what I heard was that this person was aware of the reasons why they smoke and how it's affecting their personal and professional life.
Okay.
That's what I wanted to mention.
Thank you. And thank you. That's a lot to mention. Thank you. Greatly appreciated. And let me just quickly check the chat. And trust me, we are going to get to that scenario. I promise you, especially since we have volunteers. Excellent. Jenny B also wrote in the chat, they have awareness of some sort, and they have insight. Yeah, to some degree. Sonia writes ambivalence. Client mentioned the effect of marijuana use, work, getting to work late after lunch, and behavior towards girlfriend. Courtney also added, I like the importance ruler and confidence ruler to help with ambivalence. Heather, I don't know. Oh, were you raising your hand, Heather? Go ahead.
Yeah, I just, as a student, there's so much information for me to learn right now that sometimes my brain just like breaks things down into bullet points, just to structure it. So the way I'm thinking about it is, the statement shows that they want a behavior change and there's ambivalence. So it's a good scenario for motivational interviewing. He states a desire. He states two reasons, his girlfriend and his job.
Yep.
I would want to explore ability because he hasn't really talked about ability and need, because need, if his job is potentially on the line and his relationship, there might be, how much is that there a genuine need for him in his life?
Fantastic. So not unlike Angel, Heather, you're analyzing the situation, you're determining what you would focus on next, similar to what Abraham said as well. that you kind of have a strategy in place about what you would focus on next. Yeah? Okay. Okay. So, which is fantastic. And thank you for breaking it down that way. We had one other thing in the chat. Sonia wrote, patient mentioned the pros and cons. Yes. And Heather, feel free at any time. You can just unmute. You don't have to raise your hand. Just unmute and jump in if you want. If you feel more comfortable raising your hand, go ahead, but you don't have to, just so you know. All right. And that goes for everybody. So let me ask you to consider this, and then I swear to you, we are going to Maria and Jenny to read the scenario. So Angel, Abraham, Heather all gave us their thoughts, their strategies about what they might do next. In fact, Angel gave us 3 things that he would do next. I'm going to ask you for just a moment to set all of those strategies aside. Just set all of those strategies aside for just a moment. And I'm going to bring us all back to Charmaine for a moment. And what I'm going to ask you in honor of Charmaine and what she brought to the table for us is I'm going to ask you to make your own determination of how you'd answer this question. Based on what you heard the participant, client, patient say, based on what you heard as he said it, and maybe what he said that wasn't in words, but he communicated it. What is most important to this person who is the client or the patient? What do you get from hearing him, hearing how he said what he said? What do you get? What does your gut tell you is most important to him? And go ahead and type it in the chat. What's most important to him? And I'm going to ask that all 55 of us in the learning community, if you can, respond. Heather writes his relationships. Thank you, Heather. That leaves 54 more people. I know typing takes time. Okay, Belinda J says relationship. Connection with friends. I agree, relationships. He wants to continue to smoke, although he wants to cut down. His employment, community, his relationships, his communication, his connections with his friends. Thank you. Acceptance, relationships, smoking, connections, relationships and work, employment, relationships, maintaining lifestyle, his relationships and acceptance. Thanks, Ashley. Relationships and connections. Thank you, Samantha C. Abraham says acceptance. Maria says relationships. Taylor, the reason he smokes to begin with, I forgot if it was anxiety or not, what it helps him with. Okay. Charmaine says seeking validation through associations. Francine, his relationships and being able not to have anxiety. Okay. And what I'm asking you to consider, having heard the client, did you get any sense that one thing was of greater importance than anything else? And the answer could be no. You may not have heard any priority. And what I would also say is that when people communicate to us, clients, participants, people we know, people we don't know, people, just people communicate, they will communicate to some degree of importance or priority. And we can sometimes hear that, and sometimes we can't hear that. Now, I'm going to make an observation that we'll build on when we see each other tomorrow. And that is, you didn't all say the same thing. And that's okay, because it's great that you got what you got if you got anything. And in the practice of motivational interviewing, and we know that this is an opportunity to practice motivational interviewing. We know that because there's an identified behavioral change goal that the person is considering. We know that because he is ambivalent about this behavioral change goal. He shared, thanks to Abraham, his language of ambivalence with us. We heard both sides. And we all heard it the way we heard it. So the thing I'd like you to take away from that is that there would be no one right, correct, definitive way to respond to this client. There could be as many responses as there are people in this learning community, and they could all be effective. We'd be basing them, whatever we chose to do, on our hunch. And what I throw out for your consideration is often the place to start if you can get a sense of what's most important to the person, to start with that. So just keep that on the plate for a moment. Maria and Jenny, the moment has arrived. I'm going to share, Samantha's like, great. I'm going to bring up the scenario. I'm hopeful that it's large enough for you both to be able to read it. And Jenny, I think you volunteered first. I could be wrong, but I think you volunteered first. So I will open the door to you to say, would you like to play the client or the worker?
I will play the client.
Fantastic. So Maria, with your kind consent, will you be willing to play the worker?
Sure.
Fantastic. So I'm going to share the scenario. Let me know, Jenny and Maria, if it's large enough for you to see. And then I'll just say a few things and then you can start. Okay? So, folks, I'm going to ask you to just listen to this scenario. I am going to do my best to not screw it up so that you can see your next line coming. And you'll notice that I've highlighted the counselor's line to distinguish them from the client's line. So I'm going to ask you to just listen to this. And then I'm going to ask for your reactions. And then I'll ask some specific questions. So whenever you're ready, and Maria, I believe you're the counselor, feel free to begin.
Okay. Hi, Tara. Good to see you. How are you doing today?
Just fine. Okay. You need to know I'm not going to long-term rehab. You, my probation officer, and the drug court want me to go, but I don't want to. Jail isn't what I want either, but I'd rather do my jail time so I can be done with all of this court crap.
I'm not here to force you to go to rehab.
Is that so? You know, it was you who sent me those who sent out those referrals, and I just got a call from the intake lady at St. Agnes long-term rehab. She informed me that they have a driver coming to pick me up in 2 days.
Well, you signed the releases, and your probation officer told me you're going to go away for up to 3 years if you don't take this bed. Aren't you worried about how your kids will manage without you?
Yes, I'm worried about my kids. Plus, I don't want to leave my dog. I'm worried because my ex is a garbage father and he doesn't like my dog. I am so freaking sick of being controlled by the courts. I just can't take it anymore. I want my life back.
You're struggling to put your kids and your dog's needs first. You're so tired of being controlled by drug court, and going to jail feels like your only way to escape the interfering control of the court system.
Yeah, I don't see myself as having good options. I need freedom from the courts and my probation officer. I do care about my kids and my dog, though. Don't get that twisted. I hate them seeing me as less than an adult. Using drugs and being in drug court makes me feel like a bad teenager. I don't want my kids to look down on me.
The best way that you can show them what a good parent and a healthy, sober adult looks like is to accept the long-term treatment recommendations I've set up for you and show them that you're serious about getting away from drugs. That way, they can begin to see you as a healthy, sober adult again.
I get it, of course. But here's the thing. If I'm no longer on probation and in drug court, I can be a happier and better mom. I have more money to take care of my dog and give my kids what they need. My money won't be spent on drugs anymore. My kids will understand if I make the choice to go to jail versus rehab. They know how much I hate being controlled by others and how much I want my life back.
I talked to your kids yesterday and they let me know that you are 100% they are 100% supportive of you going to long-term rehab. They are worried about you. I am too. Your kids love you and want their healthier and happy mom back. Attending long-term rehab is one of the main ways that people in your shoes can really turn their lives around and have a better chance of a sustained recovery. It's how good parents can begin to repair family problems they cause because of their drug addiction. Also, your kids mentioned that they are concerned that your dog will be given to SPCA if you go to jail. They told me your ex and your relatives don't want the dog.
You've got it all figured out. You've covered all the bases. This is exactly what I'm talking about. This is so effing messed up. Look, helper, I'm going to find a home for my dog. My kids will cope while I'm gone. They're strong and they'll forgive me. Plus, I'll be a better mom when I get back. When I get in 3 years, I won't have to worry about court dates and random screens. I'll be able to focus on working and supporting them. It's hard to jump through all of the treatment court hoops and also hold a job anyway. Plus, I've been to rehab so many times. I could teach the classes myself. I know it all, and it hasn't kept me from using.
I wish you'd let me help you. Okay, I guess I will call St. Agnes and let them know you're not accepting the bed. Is that what you really want?
Yes, I'm done with treatment and with drug court. I'm going to start working on rehoming my dog.
Excellent. End of scenario. Let me just say, I have not heard that scenario for a while. Jenny, Maria, fantastic. Super, super, super reading of the scenario. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for volunteering. It was very, very beautifully done. So let me ask folks, anything stand out to you about the conversation between the worker and the client? Anything rise to the top as you heard them speak to it? I agree, Belinda. It was a great job. They read it beautifully. Marisol writes in the chat. Let's see what Marisol writes in the chat. Marisol writes, she's determined to do it her way. Indeed, you kept your cool and clear about her options. Julie adds, I think it's the counselor was confrontational. Okay. Okay. Any other thoughts? Any other reactions to the conversation between the two?
I think her kids were obviously would be her motivation for wanting to change, and that the counselor could have done a better job of leaning into that more.
Okay.
Because there was some of that change talk there. I don't really want to leave my kids, and 3 years is a long time. I mean, your kids change a lot in 3 years. So but she was very and also if she went to, just leaning more into long-term rehab could also get you out of the drug courts and the court system, more of that, leaning more towards that stuff.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So
and you,
Samantha, go ahead.
oh, I was just gonna say what a great job they both did reading. I'm like, we got some actresses in the class.
We do. Academy Award winning. Samantha, so let me be clear. You were really you're acknowledging that you heard some things that you would have pursued, but that the counselor did not pursue.
Yes. Yeah.
Just wanted to be clear. Just wanted to be clear. Belinda J, go right ahead. And then we'll go to Angel, and then we'll go to look at some of the chats. Go ahead, Belinda.
I think the counselor pretty much kept her cool with the
Okay.
client. It seems to me that the client was determined not to go to rehab at any cost, and seemed to come up with every excuse not to change, in my opinion.
Hey, that's what we're asking for, right?
Mhm.
Fantastic. Thank you. Thanks. Yeah, Marisol, the floor is yours.
It's interesting how we all see it and hear it differently.
Go ahead. Yeah, that's why we're here, right?
In my opinion, this is my opinion based on what I heard. I
Please.
don't agree that she was confrontational. She was firm. I think that's what we need to, depending on the person, that's how you communicate. So I think inflection, tone, and accent, people might interpret that as confrontational. I didn't take that as confrontational. I took that as someone that was being firm. Okay, this is what you're saying. I want to
Okay.
be clear that the choices that you're making. So
Okay.
for me, I feel that the council did a good job actually about her decisions.
Okay.
Because she did not change her mind does not mean that she failed. The client still did what she wanted to do, and she was very clear about her decisions. That's the way I took it.
Marisol, thank you. And again, as Belinda said, this is my opinion, and that's what we're asking for here. I'm asking you for your takes, your reactions to it. So thank you. Let's see what some folks have put in the chat. Okay, Marisol, you said she's determined to do it her way. Indeed, you kept her cool and clear about her options. Julie, the counselor was confrontational. Was this an example of, and I think, Julie, you mean, was this an example of am I or not? Is that what you're asking? And you'll let me know. Lori adds, appeared to be more concerned about the dog more than the children. Jamie, it seemed like she wanted to feel more involved and in control of what was happening to her. And she was essentially giving up. Okay, that's Jamie J. Jenny B says her focus was the dog, question mark, question mark. Sanaya writes, confrontational is not so bad if you build that kind of rapport. Rebecca says the service provider needed to talk with the client before the referral was made, so client did not come in thinking decision had been made for her. It may have ended differently. Okay. Oh, Francine, maybe that's what you agree with. I could be wrong, or you might have been agreeing with Angel that the worker failed. If you want to clarify that, Francine, please do. Courtney says, that is very true. I think having the treatment already in place compounded the issue with being controlled by others. Being more inclusive when making decisions would have yielded a better response. Julie says yes. Sanaya says client knows what they want or did not want to do. More power to her. It is her decision. Heather says the client doesn't wish to be controlled, but she is in control of choosing her options. Just like all adults, we are controlled, but in actuality, we have choices. Don't go to work, you have no money. Focusing this, she is not controlled, but in control of choosing her own options, which should be examined more. Okay. Okay. Anybody else want to add anything? Any other reactions, thoughts to what you heard? Okay. Okay, Amanda. Got it. So I'm going to ask a couple of questions, and you can use the chat, or you're more than welcome to unmute. And I think one of our colleagues raised this question. Was this worker practicing motivational interviewing? Yes, no, unsure. Julie says no. Crystal says no. A lot of people are saying no. Okay, I've seen nothing but no's at this particular point. Samantha says a little. Okay. Excellent, Samantha. Samantha, would it be okay if I asked you a follow-up question? Okay, Samantha nodded her head yes. I'm going to take that as a yes. Samantha, you said that you thought that she was practicing it a little. Can you say a little bit of what, could you say a little bit about what led you to think that?
Just when she was like going over with her, like, these are the good things and the bad things about the different choices that you have. It was like where she was, but then she kind of fell off and she just like gave up.
Okay,
That's how I
so
felt.
she was looking at the pros and the cons, and then she gave up. And Samantha, I'm going to underline, because I think you're noticing something that other people may have noticed too. She was using some of the tools. She was using some of the tools. But again, I'll go back to what we said about Mason when we were talking about the example that I was using Mason's name for, which is the intentionality behind using the tools. So just keeping that in mind. Anybody else who said no, she was not practicing mode. Crystal, I saw that you said no, I think. And I'm wondering if you'd be willing to say why you believe she was not practicing motivational interviewing, if you're willing.
I just feel like she didn't explore more options and there wasn't a whole lot of support. It was just like, okay. I mean, I get if somebody's coming in your office yelling and screaming, I'm not doing this, or whatever, too. It's just kind of like, it's kind of a shutdown response, which is pretty normal. But I mean, she definitely could have done better at some different questions.
So you say no, she was not practicing motivational interviewing.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, let me just quickly check the chat because I know people put things in the chat. Rebecca adds, if they had, it might have been a better conversation. Better meaning outcome overall. Yeah. Again, the counselor was pushing her opinion, aka confrontational, in a way that didn't draw on more of what the client was thinking and feeling. Yep. Okay. Okay. All right. So one other question, and it's interesting to me that this hasn't come up, and I'll just raise it and see if anybody noticed it. Did anybody notice that the counselor spoke to the children about the mother's option and then brought the children's answer to the mother? Did anybody notice that? Okay, Rebecca says yes. Crystal's nodding her head. And Rebecca, do you want to add anything to what Julie said about it being concerning? Rebecca adds, the same thing is making the referral first before talking with the patient. Yes, Courtney adds, I did. Perhaps the counselor was attempting to eliminate potential barriers, anticipating excuses the client may try to use and already having a response prepared. Courtney, if it's okay, could I ask you a follow-up question in regard to that? It's okay? Okay. So if indeed that was the case, that was the rationale behind the worker doing that, what are your thoughts about her taking that action?
I didn't think that it was necessarily the best choice to do that. I could possibly play devil's advocate, like I said, and see maybe where their thought processes were by reaching out to the children and things. But yeah, I feel like that she may have meant well, or the counselor may have meant well, but I don't know that it necessarily came across to the client that way.
Fantastic. And Courtney, I really want to quote you in what you just said, because I think there's a lot of this going on in this scenario. So I really appreciate that you said this. The counselor may have meant well, may have absolutely meant well, and yet it was not kind of going forward. Yeah. Okay.
Good in theory and not in practice.
Good in theory, not in practice. Thank you. Thank you. Rebecca adds, my worry is talking with people before the client, the professional loses trust with them. Sania writes, the client will lose trust with the counselor. Francine, that could cause friction at home. Maybe the kids didn't want the counselor to repeat that. Yeah. And Jamie L has acknowledged not client-centered. So folks, before we conclude for today, let me clarify something for you, and we will come back to this tomorrow. I'm going to clarify a couple of things. Thing one, this conversation that Jenny and Maria read so beautifully and so actively and fully, this conversation was not the practice of motivational interviewing. And I can add something to that. Not only, and Angel, I'm thinking of you and others as I say this, not only was it not the practice of motivational interviewing, it was also not in, and I'm thinking of Abraham as well, it was also not in the style or manner of an am I consistent, am I spirited approach, which is the relational foundationship upon which the MI conversation happens. So it was neither am I spirited nor am I consistent, nor was it the practice of motivational interviewing. Okay, so let's just be very clear about that. I don't want anybody to leave part one and think, oh, that worker was practicing MI. They were not. Now, to Samantha's point, and Samantha really beautifully observed, the worker was using OARS at certain points, was offering reflections, asked open-ended questions, and yet they were still not practicing motivational interviewing. So let's be very clear. Now, I'm going to invite you to have a thought of consideration before we see each other next, which is tomorrow at the same time, starting at 1 o'clock. The thought that I'm going to ask you to consider as you reflect on the beautiful work that Jenny and Maria did, why am I saying that it was an am I inconsistent, not am I spirited approach? I want you to think about the whole conversation and what about it makes it not consistent with the way we want to be when we're building that relational foundationship. Okay? No, I believe it's, oh, tomorrow is at 10 a.m., Tree? Tomorrow's at 10 a.m. Okay. So we'll see you tomorrow. Thank you, Tree. We'll see you tomorrow at 10 a.m. and Fridays at 10 a.m. So today is the outlier. Today is the afternoon. Okay, good. I had it a little reversed, but my schedule would have confirmed it properly. So folks, I cannot thank you enough. I am leaving you with that question that we will begin with tomorrow. Okay? What about the conversation and specifically the way the worker interacted? And I purposefully don't want you to have the scenario to reread. I want you to think about it. Abraham, did you want to say anything?
Oh, I guess I was thinking about the question, but I guess I will hold my response and think about
Fantastic. And Abraham, would you be willing to start us off tomorrow?
That'll be fine. Yes.
So Abraham will start us off tomorrow. Folks, you really made this a pleasure today. I'm looking forward to tomorrow, and we'll see you tomorrow. Take good care and see you tomorrow. And Heather, I'm glad it was entertaining. Excellent. So we'll see you tomorrow. And Abraham, thank you so much. You'll start us off tomorrow. Thank you.